for the TechTalk series. Now, this is the 10th, as you saw, that Mary has sort of, stitched together. We run the other series called The World of Water, or WOW for short. So we run the WOW series in the alternate weeks. If this Friday we run this, in the other Friday or Saturday we run the other WOW sessions with people in Indian cities. We now work in 4 cities in India. I'm not going to give you the names. You have a challenge with names. It's always a challenge with names in India. Well, we work in those 4 cities now, and we're beginning to see that there's more than ordinary interest among a very small bunch of people who want to see what they can do about it. Now, you step out of your house, you go on the street, there's no one really interested in, on any crisis on water. No one really actually connects into any such thing as a crisis, right? And you know that. So one of the challenges, I suppose, people like you also have, is that most often, there isn't a problem. I mean, if you're a benefactor, if you're a business person, you're an entrepreneur, you're looking to see if you can solve the problem, right? But in this customer market, half the time, there is no problem. No one really has a problem. They're saying, okay, so where is the problem on water? What are you trying to solve? Why are you, sort of even approaching me? So we start with a there is no problem kind of statement, right? Very unusual for any business, as you know. And if you went back to the first quarter of any basic learning in an MBA school, they will tell you, don't be foolish, don't start anything which doesn't have a need in the marketplace. So now, what is a need in the marketplace? What is a want in the marketplace is something that we've all wrestled with all our lives. I'll stop there on that one. It's 6:06. I'll take only a minute or two. Good evening, and thank you to all of you here. Who are here, Neil Matthews, MD Rana, every one of you. I know you're all leaders in the area. You're here to listen to Len Bland, present probably over about 15-20 minutes, and Mary will introduce him. Now, what interested Mary and me, and then how we made this event how we curated this event was like this. Mary spoke to me first, and then I said, if it's nanotechnology, we know that nanotechnology has been there for about a decade now. What is nanotechnology? Well, it refers to a broad range of tools, techniques, applications that simply involve particles at the finest levels on the approximate size and scale of a few, a few to 100 of nanometers as far as diameters go. Now, particles of this size have some very unique physio or chemical or physico-chemical and surface properties. We have here a limnologist, Len, in Upendra Raval, who understands these things extremely well, and I'm sure he's looking forward to listening to you. Advocates of nanotechnology suggest that this area of research could contribute to solutions for some of the major problems we face on the global scale today, on ensuring supply of safe drinking water, for example, for a really large and growing population. And then, of course, it has applications in medicine, in energy, in agriculture, and so on. But Len is going to stick to water. Over to you, Mary, to try and see what you want to tell the rest of us here on Len Bland and why you picked on Len Bland.
Yes, well, thank you, Hari. You did a very good job, and I'm always entertained and learn something from your I guess you have insights across, well-curated insights from around the globe on our water situation. And Hari Len is a green building expert who's also driving forward initiatives with the Green Building Council globally. And what is beautiful about the World of Water Action Forum that he's started is that it's all about action. So Len, you will like it because Len's been navigating policy and people who are indecisive, and he'd love to see some action. But we invited Len here because the topic is renewable water over this trilogy. Dave Shackleton started it off talking about the renewable lakes and the opportunity to mitigate harmful algae blooms, as well as any pollutants and sludge in our wastewater, as well as in our lakes. And Len's technology takes that a step further with the nanobubbles in allowing for the oxygen to reside in the water and the other sources so it can do its work. But I'll defer to Len on that. I just want to mention that he is not only a waterpreneur who's been navigating and has solutions in place in oil and gas, as well as in lakes and in across the industry, but he is, and working with utilities as well. He is a serial entrepreneur and a consultant to many different startups here in the US. So he can consult on your financial modeling. He's a former accountant and has managed to navigate the water industry and understand it here in the US. So if people have questions about that. And Dr. Raj, good to see you here, because Dr. Raj started Tetra Tech India, Len, and he lives in the west suburbs here in Illinois, but is also someone who is making connections all the time to make things happen. And so I don't want to delay further, Len. We all want to hear from you. And so you have the ability to share your screen. And I just want you to know that you have an audience of experts here who all have good ideas, and I invite them to ask their questions or share connections or ideas for Len in the chat, which we will also save. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thanks everybody. I really appreciate this opportunity to meet everybody, and some of you I may have met before in my previous visits. So let me get started. The presentation is going to be short, but feel free to jump in with questions, and let me get started here. So our company's NGT Energy. And we prepared this presentation for people interested in wastewater. Now, Mary mentioned a little bit about my background. For the last 17 years, I've been preparing entrepreneurs for investment and providing strategic and financial advisory services. And in that time, we've seen thousands of inventions. And in fact, one company that I co-founded does back office processing for US insurance agencies and brokerages, and we offshored all the work that we do to India, and that company continues to grow. It's very Patracorp is the name of the company, and they're doing an incredible job. But looking at all these inventions, I found one that was world changing, and I just had to be part of it. And that was, what they were doing was creating nanobubbles and using them in an aerobic digester. And it was very interesting because, theoretically, all the work had been done in getting already in the wastewater treatment plant and consuming organic material. And then they were trucking out truckloads of water and sludge and putting it on fields. And that can be the basis. If you don't do a good job of treating the sludge coming out of a wastewater treatment plant, then when you're putting on the fields can be contaminated and can be the beginning of people getting sick from wastewater. In this case, that trucking was really expensive, and this technology was applied, or at least the predecessor to our technology was applied, and the amount of waste was reduced by 80%. So it was very exciting, and I wanted to be part of it. Then when we got a hold of it, we started making a list of all the different markets that we could impact with the technology in all the different places, and we got so excited because we discovered that it was a technology that could be a platform technology. And by platform, we means same technology working across multiple markets, whether it's wastewater, whether it's oil and gas and the wastewater coming from that, whether it's cleaning water to grow plants or fish or animals, or even cleaning water to better clean up healthcare so that you can kill dangerous viruses and bacteria. What makes nanobubbles special, and now I bet you've all become somewhat familiar with them, but what makes them special are a few things. So the size of the bubble makes a difference. We see nanobubbles are generally less than 375 nanometers in size. There's a lot of pretenders out there saying, oh, we make microbubbles or we make micro nanobubbles. Microbubbles are generally greater than 375 nanometers. And here's some of the differences. So microbubbles vary in size. That size difference in the bigger bubbles gives them a rise rate, whereas nanobubbles don't have a rise rate. The surface tension of the liquid is greater than the buoyancy of the bubble, so they don't rise like normal bubbles. And that's really the key for a wastewater treatment. But when you have bubbles that vary in size, that means they're rising. And one question you could ask those to find out if you have true nanobubbles is you just ask, well, how fast are the bubbles rising? And if they say anything but the bubbles don't rise, you know you're really talking about microbubbles. It's been very difficult to track down nanobubbles because you can't see them in a normal light-based microscope, in a regular microscope, because 375 nanometers is smaller than the wavelength of light. And so, but you can see them with a laser, and you can now measure them with a device called dynamic light scattering that Malvern Nanosite makes. And so we can see how many are there. One of the things that sets them apart is they have high internal pressure. Microbubbles have low internal pressure, and that pressure is maintained by having a consistent charge within and then negative charge outside the bubble. And what's cool about that is that's like two south poles of magnets trying to come together. They're not going to connect. And so that's what keeps the bubbles separate and keeps them from aggregating. And when you keep them separate, that means you have all these bubbles, and it means that you're creating huge amounts of extra surface area for reactive processes. So just to give you an idea of the magnitude, if you think about a normal surface bubble where you might be looking at you know, something on this size, a coarse bubble. We see fine bubble generators, which the industry has gone to. Those are micro bubble generators. They might be, you know, maybe as small as 1 micrometer, usually around 10. And there's limited amounts that you could have in the liquid. Here we have milliliters, and we're looking at 10 to the 6th or 10 to the 7th milliliters. Microbubbles can be 10 to the 8th or even into the 10 to the 9th number of bubbles per milliliter, and they're much smaller, like we said. So let's just give you an idea. This is water that you think this all looks the same. And here we're going to show a laser shining through some of this water. And so this has some oxygen nanobubbles in it. And the cup on the left side, you can see has oxygen nanobubbles, and we're shining a laser light through it. And you can see up and down that column, the laser light is going through. Yet there's regular water to the right with no nanobubbles in it. You see no laser light diffraction. So this is actually bouncing off clouds of nanobubbles that are throughout the column. And throughout the column is really key because they're not rising. So they're usable by bacteria and other things in the water. Now, there are a number of ways that nanobubbles are being made today. And those include membranes as being a very popular way, and they work great if you want to make nanobubbles. Oh, yeah, a question? Okay.
Please carry on.
They work great if you have a clean source of water. So the challenge is if there's any kind of possibility that there could be a buildup over time, the membranes clog up and they become difficult to maintain. So if we're treating wastewater, it's a challenge because we don't want to use a freshwater source in order to clean up our wastewater. We want to use that same wastewater source. So we want something that doesn't clog up. There's also in creating nanobubbles, you have some challenges in scalability because everybody touts this great information about how many nanobubbles they have per liter. Again, they might be 10 to the 8th bubbles per milliliter. But it turns out that many of the tools out there that get there, they only get there with recirculating through their system 5 times. So when you say, how much water does your system treat, and they have a quote, you may have to divide that by 5 times if you want a full concentration of nanobubbles. So it makes it difficult to scale for large bodies of water. What we do is we create nanogas nanobubbles in solution. And we've measured over 500 billion nanobubbles per liter, essentially, 5 times 10 to the 8 milliliters. And you can see a clear set of water. You can see how this green laser light is showing there's clouds of nanobubbles in there. Now, if you're using it for wastewater treatment, one of the ways to use it that's fantastic is getting high levels of dissolved oxygen in solution. And if we think about dissolved oxygen, you might be familiar with Henry's law that says for a given temperature and pressure, you can only measure so much dissolved oxygen in a fluid. And so some DO sensors only go up to 20 because tap water might be only 0 to maybe 14 at the most. With our nanogas bubbles, we've measured dissolved oxygen levels up to 140 parts per million. And here we're showing a YSI device at 64 degrees, normal temperature, normal pressure, atmospheric pressure, and we're measuring 52 parts per million of dissolved oxygen. So what can you do with that? We'll talk about that in a minute. One of the other things that we get with our nanobubbles is it becomes scalable. So rather than saying you need to run it through our system 5 times, we can actually put, let's say, 5 gallons of water into 5 gallons of nanobubble water into 45 gallons of regular tap water or source water. And we end up with 50 gallons, and here we're showing those 50 gallons have 38 parts per million of dissolved oxygen. So we multiplied the water that we're treating 9 times. We just take a side stream, and so that means we can start treating large bodies of water. So let's look at some of those. Now, in municipal wastewater, you may have, I know that last session, Dave talked about ponds that are covered with harmful algal blooms. And one of the common ways to treat water that are low cost that villages and municipalities use is they use a pond and they let water and the air flowing over it and anaerobic bacteria in the bottom treat that pond. What you can end up with is stinky pond that becomes algae covered. This is in the US. It's most likely cyanobacteria, a harmful algal bloom on part of that pond. It's got stinky algae covered. And in fact, I want to show you a bit about this pond that we're just finishing up treating right now. So this is a typical flow in structure for a pond that when at its inception was probably very well designed. So they actually have 3 ponds. the sewage comes into the first pond here. And if you look carefully, you can see kind of this dark area here. And that is at the very influx of the pond. This pond is near or over capacity. And so they're starting to build up sludge islands of waste. And that's what we're seeing here. And so they start treating the waste here. The water flows through pond 1 into pond 2. Pond 2 is where we saw that harmful algal bloom. And then it flows into pond 3. And the hope is that the pond is working, that now we have water that's releasable and can be land applied in pond 3 without creating any harm to the environment and without getting people sick. But it turns out that if this is over capacity, then what you're releasing in from pond 3 is dangerous. And in fact, they were having to empty pond 3 once or twice a week because the water just built up so quickly in this treatment solution. You also get problems with wastewater if you're lucky enough to have a sewer system in a city, either open or closed sewer system. You get iron sulfide and hydrogen sulfide, especially hydrogen sulfide, building up those sewers. And if you've been by them particular stinky sewers, that's coming from the emulsion or the ammonia or the hydrogen sulfide that's built up. And some of you are familiar with systems that might work in lift stations to reduce that stink and reduce the hydrogen sulfide. In addition, when you have infused oxygen, if you're trying to create, if you're just trying to create oxygen, you're trying to put it into water, and you have low pressure situations, which can happen in some of these sewers, then the oxygen just bubbles out. And in fact, one of the challenges of these ponds, they don't use any aeration because they're shallow. And anytime you have a shallow pond or lagoon, it's hard to use aeration because the bubbles just come out too fast and they don't place enough oxygen in the water. So what we're talking about with nanobubbles is the real difference. So if you compare, if you think about it, there's about 21% oxygen in the air. With a nanobubble, you might have as much as 25% oxygen transfer efficiency. With fine bubbles, the best you might see is 30%. And so when you look at oxygen transfer, you might get, if you're using air, if you're using oxygen, you might be around 20% of the oxygen going into, and you might be able to get 20% oxygen transfer versus just 6.3% with a fine bubbler. So in other words, if you're using air, you're not going to get a lot of oxygen transfer. You're going to use a lot of energy to get there. And so we could be as much as 320% more oxygen, more efficient, and pure oxygen could get you close to 90, 95% oxygen transfer efficiency. So only 5 or 10% of the energy put in wasted with oxygen that might come out. So let's talk about the situation that we talked about with that pond. We worked with our partner, Alpha Omega Resources, and you can see them here doing the kind of checking you need to do. Solutions like Dave Shackleton's go hand in hand with what we're doing because you have to combine a collection of solutions. And so the first thing you start with, though, is let's define the problem. And that's where a lot of people say, oh, I've got a solution. Let me just throw it in there and it'll fit. And that's not true. We need to diagnose what the problem is. It's like going to a doctor and you go to the doctor and you walk in and they say, oh, I know exactly what's wrong. Here's some medicine. This will solve your problem. Thank you very much. And you go, wait a second. I didn't even tell you what was wrong with me. How do I know this is going to work? So it's true for wastewater too. We need to diagnose the problem in order to have the right solution. So here we are going out. What we did in this lagoon is we did bathymetric testing, which is almost like a sonar that tells us exactly how much sludge and what level it is in the water. We did some sludge testing too, and then now there are solutions for DNA testing to tell us what kind of bacteria is in that sludge as well. So all of that was done to characterize what was going on with this pond before we started. And that ends up, you think, oh, that's just going to increase our cost. That ends up lowering the cost because you end up with the right solution. So we did all that testing beforehand. And that second pond was covered with that algal bloom. In just one day, we saw that starting to clear up. And at the end of 2 weeks, it had returned to its normal state. Some algae in that pond is good because beneficial algae, but it's no longer that harmful algal bloom covering the surface and having bugs walking all over it. So within 2 months, we saw over 1 foot of sludge reduction, and we saw the algal bloom disappear, and we saw the sludge islands beginning to disappear as well. And in fact, with that, we added that 1 foot sludge reduction, it was almost like adding a whole nother pond to the solution. And now what we did was the sludge has been reduced from about 3 feet 3 inches down to 2 feet 3 inches, and total suspended solids, and it's much looser on the bottom, and total suspended solids was reduced in this 2-month period from about 3 feet down to 6 inches. So a huge amount of sludge and organic material was chewed up. So instead of having to dredge these lagoons to turn them back into usefulness, we were able to apply this nanobubbles. Now, it wasn't just nanobubbles though. It was a solution like Dave's with enzymes. It was the right bacteria applied based on the DNA testing. And it was monitoring the gas and the liquid to make sure that we were maintaining about 2 ppm dissolved oxygen. So all of those things work together to make this all work. Another area, we talked about the sewage collection systems and the stink you have associated with wastewater sometimes. You get iron sulfide and hydrogen sulfide. We're doing some work in the oil industry where we see this kind of buildup. And the oil industry pumps water out of the ground. In the US, they pump 7 times more water than they pump oil out of the ground. And so they have to get rid of it. And you see on the left here is the type of water they have after they've taken the oil, after they've gotten most of the oil out. There's still some oil in here. And you look at the stuff on the right side and you go, oh, there, I still see the oil, but that's not true. This is after treatment. This is just iron sulfide and hydrogen sulfide in the water. So we went to that site, and with our oxygen nanobubbles, we treated that. Here was the beginning water, and here's the end water of what we were treating on site. So that's working differently than the biological treatment you want for a pond. You're getting a chemical redox reaction with that oxygen. And it happens quickly because you have very small bubbles with much more surface area that are able to react more quickly on a chemical basis. So we take out chemical oxygen demand you see sometimes in industrial wastewater, as well as redox reactions like you do with hydrogen sulfide. Our system is completely automated. We can see it over the web. So it could be on the cell phone, or we can see it monitored on our computers. And the idea is that we want to collect the data so that we can eventually apply artificial intelligence and get smarter and smarter about how the equipment is maintained, and about how to apply the gases, the nanobubbles, to the solution. One of the biggest challenges with putting great solutions out there is making sure they're continuing to work. So one of the ways we've stepped up to think about solving that is, instead of selling equipment, we think about renting it and monitoring what's going on, including a whole service solution that we need people on the ground to provide, to make sure that things keep working. Because if you let the equipment break down, if you don't use it, then your solution, you spent all this money and you haven't gotten the results. During the development of the technology, it was tried out on the Mithi River through Mumbai. And that is exactly the kind of problem we were describing, with this incredible stink flowing through the city. At least it was at that point in time, and maybe that's been solved by now. But the developmental versions of the technology were taken to Mumbai, applied to the river. The stink went away, and the fish started jumping where the solution was applied. It was also tested by the US Navy on naval bilge water, and we can see what that looks like. And the organic process took that bilge water from dark to, again, consuming all the organic material, including the hydrocarbons, including the oils and greases. We've got, this process is patented. We've got 18 granted patents and 30 pending, plus trade secrets. So we think that by applying solutions like this with nanobubbles, you can solve global water and food needs. And I'm open to questions, and I see there's some comments in the chat.
Wow, Len, I loved it. And I just think that everyone, I'm sure, learned something here today, but most importantly, that your technology is really a partner in technology, enabling other solutions. And so you work, if you could just explain that, your desire for partners or to go to market with a provider in oil and gas or in the lakes.
Yeah, I think that you've got to, first of all, we don't have the people on the ground in India to provide the service and solution that we need. We need solution providers that are ready to take this and bring this together with the other pieces that make a full package. If you don't make a full package, you don't end up with the right solution. And so that package, we believe, all we're doing is, in a pond like that, is we're enabling nature to do what nature should be doing, right? So, when we were testing out our solution, we got a can of motor oil from the grocery store. We put it into an aquarium full of water. And then we went out to the back of behind our facility, and we got some dirt and we threw it in there. Why do we throw dirt in there? Because that dirt contains bacteria. Now, that bacteria was good enough to consume the hydrocarbons as long as it had enough oxygen to feed it, to enable it to grow. But if we had chosen the best bacteria, the right bacteria, if we had chosen enzymes to enable that bacteria to accelerate the growth, then we would have seen that those hydrocarbons, that dirty water, that organic material chewed up even faster. And that's the goal. And so we characterize it, we figure out what is the challenge with that particular wastewater before we start. Choose the right bacteria, choose the right enzyme, have the right level of nanobubbles, the right level of oxygen set. We monitor and maintain that level. And we need people on the street that do that work and then help us with our monitoring, with our implementation in worldwide.
Oh, that's excellent. And I know BK Prasad has a question here. We want to call on him, expertise in plumbing. So,
Len, it was nice to know that you did try in the Mithi River in Bombay. Is it a slow-moving river or a fast-moving river? You know, like, is it very brisk? The flow? Because
slow. BK is very slow. It's more a sewer today. There are two rivers in Bombay. This is the second one, Mithi. Mithi runs from Powai or some such thing down to the sea.
no, but,
Very short river. Yeah. So it's a very slow flowing river. Yeah.
can
it's
this
also
be
dead? You know, almost dead. There is zero. No fish in that river. So.
Okay. No, why I was asking this, can this technology be used in Rishabhavati River?
Sure, it can be. Definitely, it can be used.
Because we have a fabulous river which is 42 kilometers long, but now it has become a sewage carrying river in Bangalore, in the heart of the city.
BK, I'm stepping in because if you ask Len, he will say, well, if you have a problem of this kind, go ahead. Len is going, if you ask Len this question, whether Vrishabhavati is, a river that can have application from his solutions, he will of course say yes. He will also say, like he said earlier, that we have to find one smart professional solution provider who will then synthesize and make a full package, as he said, out of the solution, right? Because, Len comes from one aspect of it. Dave Shackleton, who's sitting here, is coming from another aspect of it. In fact, Dave, last week, on this lake in Trichy that Neil Matthews is writing about, he writes to Vijay in Trichy and says, hey, let me now tell me what is the depth of this lake. And then he mentions what Len talked about. He says, he's asking Vijay, Dave is asking Vijay, if he can do a bathymetric test or whatever it's called. Now I see that Len is a guy who can do that bathymetric test that, Vijay needs for his lake for securing the data that they will need in order to stitch the solution together. So it's a team, Prasad.
Yeah, we have that. That's the reason I said we can enable this in Bangalore.
Do you think you can do that? How do we do that? That is, on Vrishabhavati, what is the reach and influence you can bring in a way that we can put some sense into the government and make them want to? If you say yes to that, then we can put a team together.
Why not? Yeah, I'll say yes, because we can go approach the government itself. Yeah, that's right.
Government means what? It's Hydra headed, right? I mean, are we talking BWS?
Of course, it comes under, it doesn't come under pollution control board, unfortunately. It comes under river authority. So we can tap the correct ministers, because we have some MLAs who are very close to me. So
wonderful. Very brave, Prasad. If you are willing to do this, I'm willing to back you. You tell me what I need to do.
Here's my challenge for you.
Yeah.
All right. There's a really nice used to be a really nice lake in Hyderabad that we went to see. Anybody remember the name of that lake?
Hussain Sagar. Hussain
Sagar.
Yeah.
So one of our investors is originally from India, and he said, originally from Hyderabad, and he said, I used to swim in that lake. And now it's not safe anymore. I mean, you imagine swimming in it, and you talk about waterborne diseases and getting sick. So in the government, the world government had designated a lot of money to go clean this up. And they said, well, we just want you to take your technology and put nanobubbles down at the bottom of the lake, which is really cool, because those anaerobes that are down at the bottom, they were creating a stink, right? And they weren't solving the problem, and they had a lot of sludge buildup. They wanted to get rid of, it's a big lake. They wanted to get, start cleaning it up. And we said, they said, can you put oxygen at the bottom of the lake? Yes, absolutely. We could put oxygen at the bottom of the lake. It will stay there and go to work. But we said, but we don't know how much. So what we want to do is we need to get we need to get some measurements. We need to get how much, send us a chemical analysis of the water that's in that lake, right? Then tell us how much and what type of water is coming into the lake. Well, it's coming in from all kinds of rivers and chemical pollutants that are themselves being overloaded. And so we never were able to really provide a quote or solution for it because we couldn't get the chemical analysis of what was in that lake, and we couldn't get the analysis of what was feeding that lake. Right. So if you're going to go after a river, the very first step is to get a chemical analysis of what's in that river.
Got it.
All right. And figure out what's feeding that river, where are the sources. I mean, if you're just hamstrung and you can't go after the sources of the pollution, then at least measure what's feeding it so you can know, okay, this is the size of the system I'm going to need to bring in order to solve this problem. I need to know how much nutrient, how much chemical is coming into this. And, you know, maybe it's chemical we can solve with a redox reaction. Maybe it's, you know, chemical oxygen demand, you know, etc.
Yeah, sorry. You said that earlier. For want of time, Dave Shackleton, I know you're screaming to speak because, you know, all of what Len is talking about is something that you have already told us in the context of the Trichy Lake, whether it's about chemical analysis of the water, the depth of water, how much water is, you know, wastewater is now dunked into the lake every day, you know, stuff like that. Dave, if let's say, okay, Len, you wouldn't know this, but Dave and Mary know this, that there is this other guy from Chennai sitting here called Chandra, who tells us, like Len, told us of some other place, that 50 years ago, there was this wonderful river called Adyar in Chennai, where people used to go boating and, you know, swimming and stuff. So we know all the miserable, you know, stuff that we have done to lakes and cities and stuff, such in the last, say, 50, 60 years. Dave, if we want to actually make something happen with this 1 hour that we are spending together today, what would you think you would advise the Trichy Lake guy, which is a good example for, say, Prasad here, who is talking of a river in Bangalore, or Chandra, who is talking of a river in Chennai, in ways that Len steps in first before you do for that diagnosis, which can lead then to the solution that you can offer to that lake in Trichy. Dave.
I'm not 100% sure. I don't fully understand Len's approach. The issue that we've had with nanobubbles, as we understand it, really is scalability. So I think they've proved very effective in ponds, lagoons, tanks, where it's a small sort of contained environment. When it becomes scalable over tens, hundreds, and thousands of acres, I think that's where the jury's still out, and that's where it needs a more comprehensive approach.
Oh, all right. Can you explain a little more vis-a-vis a river?
Sorry, well,
Dave, you know what you said now between of ponds and tanks. If I were to now take a river, how does that change? What is the scale challenge that you have?
Well, similar. Obviously, it depends. What you have to look at there, obviously, is organic load, flow rates, fluctuations seasonally, and so on. We've done rivers, and whereas in the lake you've got retention time is important in solution design, because if you've got average retention time of several months, that's one thing. If you've got an average retention time of a few weeks or days, that's something completely different. A river, basically you have zero retention time because of the flow. So in terms of the algorithms and the design aspects, it is very, very different in rivers to bodies of water that have some sort of residence time.
Right. Len, your response to that?
I think Dave's right. I think the challenge has been scalability with the nanobubble solutions that other nanobubble solutions that people are offering. I mean, none of this is inexpensive. And so even in the US, we have, harmful algal blooms. We have red tide in Florida. It's like, those can be solved. But the question is, who is going to pay? So you have to have a partner that's got, that can fund the project, and it's not inexpensive when you're treating large bodies. However, they can be solved. We're talking with a major oil company in South America, and they're producing 700,000 barrels of wastewater a day. That's 28 million US gallons of water a day that they're pumping out of the ground that they need to treat. We've got a system that can handle that, right? So we are scalable up to very large quantities of water. And the way I said we do that, that's different, is instead of needing to process all the water, we couldn't possibly process all the water in the river. We need to take a side stream, load that up with high levels of oxygen, and then mix that back in.
Exactly. Side stream is the best way, Glenn, because you need to isolate some section and treat it, because in a flowing river, that's what in Delhi we have 17 different channels of sewage feeding a major river called the Yamuna River. And so what I had looked at this problem there and said, it's
Raj, since you are the expert on this, let's try and see if you can help me resolve this problem. See, I don't know if Trichy is really interested. Those guys are not present, I think, even today. Now, my point is this, that if I have a lake, as they said they have, now Prasad is saying we have a river, as we do in Bangalore. Dave is saying that, retention time is the key when it comes to nanobubbles.
Absolutely.
So how do we therefore, where do we therefore get Lenin when it comes to a lake or when it comes to a river? And where does Dave come in order to stitch a solution? I mean, at the end of this session today or this hour today, I don't want us to say, well, we had a nice discussion. No, I need to say that in the next 2 months, we will be able to get to one solution in India. Over to you, Raj.
Yeah. So, for example, what we had proposed in one of Badapula drains in Delhi is we walked the whole route. Subijoy did most of the data collection there. And we found about 5 or 6 locations along that 16, 17 kilometers of that sewage drain where there was enough land to divert that drain water into a pond area we create, which has got 5-day retention time. Okay. So in that 5 days, we treat that with aeration systems, and nanobubbles is another advanced aeration system. And then we said, after 5 days, what happens is it drops off some of the sludge there. And the bottom, we can keep on treating that in that pond. But in that 5 days, it has brought down the biological oxygen demand, COD, to a level where it can be put back into the drain. So if you do that around 6, 7 locations along the drain, the ultimate quality of water entering the Yamuna River is significantly better than what it is doing right now. And when I told the solution to the Delhi Jal Board chairman, he says, Raj, the MCD, the Municipal Corporation of Delhi, is in charge of that particular piece of land. So, they don't cooperate. I said, I got so upset at him. I said, Mr. Ravi or whatever, I said, you are telling me that I, sitting in Chicago, have to coordinate with the authorities in MCD for the Delhi Jal Board to get this thing done. Okay. So he says, no, I'm not saying that. But that is the problem. I said, I know the problem. People have to work together.
I know. Raj will leave the the negatives. Can you help us facilitate this thing? I'm still not really seriously sure of Trichy's resolve on wanting to do. I'm seeing that Chennai has got somebody who is really wanting to do. Prasad is now encouraging today.
Right.
Question now is this. One of us, meaning one of these cities, whoever is interested and keen and actually wants to do and not just talk, needs to take this up, and we need to bring these two guys together, is the sense I'm getting today, Len and Dave, into such a project, right? Number one. The second one is that if it is a tank, then it is easier for Len, is what I'm understanding. You need to correct me on that. But if it's a river, I need to find those extra land pockets around the river, on the flanks of it, for me to see that I have what you called as settlement ponds, let us say, which can enhance the oxygenation levels for water, right?
What during the development of the technology, what they did for the what they did in the Mithi River was they set equipment on the sides of the river, and they just treated the water it was flowing by. All right. Now, what happens is we're getting oxygen. There's natural bacteria in that river that if they have enough oxygen, they're going to thrive. Okay. We can seed that river with more bacteria to enable that bacteria to grow. We need something healthy to chew up the organic waste that's being put into the river. All right, we looked at this kind of process for millions and millions of gallons of flow in an Iraqi river, and we designed a whole solution. It's not inexpensive. You talk about a river, you talk about a fast flow, you're talking about, this is a multi-million-dollar project. It's a big project, but rivers can be done. And when I say a side stream, you put a piece of equipment on the side, we suck in water from that river into that machine, we put it back into the river, we let the river do the work. It doesn't have to be, batch processes necessarily. But when you have a river, you have a lot of water flowing, Dave is right, you need a scalable solution.
Again, a team has to be put together, and there are a lot of local experts in India who can do this analysis of what's in that pond, the chemistry and the depth of the sludge, all that. So putting that team together, collecting the data, and then presenting it to people like Dave and Len who have done it, then you come up with a workable solution, which we can then take it to the authorities and say, this has to be done. This is the way to do it. Otherwise, it will just be spinning our wheels. Okay.
Then, well, you know the challenges, Raj, the obvious ones in what you have said. Because to get somebody like that to invest time to something else to reach the point. Well, it'll happen. I'm sure it'll happen. With what we are just now trying. Hussain Sagar, you said we have this other person from Hyderabad who's not here today, but he's very, very keen, and he's really doing things to to get the Hyderabad mission going. And I think he will take to something like that. I'll discuss it with him too. While Prasad, as you said, I need to do offline with them, put together one or two other people, go to the government, see, you know that best, that engineering is far more complex than nanotechnology is, so, and well, it's nice to have, Len, go on. You want to say something?
I mean, here's how it worked. I'll just walk you through this. And maybe it was, we need somebody there to sell for us, right? And that was probably it. But here's here's what it seemed like to us. They said, can you solve Hussain Sagar? Well, we think so. Yeah, we think so. Get us a chemistry panel and tell us what's in that lake and what's coming into that lake. And then we'll tell you how much does it cost. And they say, well, how much does it cost? We don't know yet. And so we can't tell you. And so that's where it stopped. We could never tell how much it was going to cost. We couldn't guarantee that we were going to solve the solution because we didn't know the problem.
Now, any problem solver will say, I need this kind of data to start looking at the situation, to diagnose the problem.
Okay.
If you don't give me the data, I'm flying blind. I cannot. Okay, like a doctor. I won't give you facilities for MRI test. I won't give you anything. No. You tell me the solution. No, I won't do it. Can I have all this test information? I won't give the solution.
Absolutely.
Well, we should check.
Chetan Kale, you're saying that you did the material analysis.
Yes.
Now, if I were to tell you, in one of these cities, let's see who has got the resolve and the commitment.
Yes.
There are 4 cities we are working in. And let's say I said, Mr. Chetan Kale, there is this Mr. City, Mr. some town, Trichy or Bangalore, whatever, who wants to understand a little more. And like Raj said, get to that point of data and diagnosis. Then we call Dave and say, hey, this is what you got. Dave says, this is not what I want. You please get Len to do what he's got to do. Is that, can we get you into this process somewhere? I mean, is it
well, I'll tell you how the whole story about Mithi River. So pollution board had no data with them. The only report they had was somewhere back in 1980s done by somebody. So they, we being in Mumbai, we told them, we'll get you done. So we started from Powai. So it originates from the, Tansa is where it originates. Right. It overflows. It overflows back, from the Powai, it flows on. And then the problem in Mithi River is there is a lot of sewage dumping, industrial waste dumping. So it's not only just rainwater, it's pure sewage with industrial waste, you name it.
Yes.
And we have the analysis of source where all the pollutants are coming, and pollution board uses that report for every project. Now they came up with a new Mithi River training project, so they are putting banks along it. And then the new airport showed, the runway was extended over Mithi River. That was another, and then they had flooding back in 2005, 2006. So Gopinath Munde actually used our report. He was blaming us. He said, why are you guys doing again and again the same report? But then in his defense, he used the same report in the press. He said, we have done the analysis. So he was trying to defend.
No, red card again. And let's stop this business of berating the government. We get nowhere.
No, so the point I'm trying to make is we need a report from Hussain Sagar or any river or lake.
No, my question to you, will you say, I just need one simple answer from you.
Yes.
If I got, let us say, BK Prasad in Chennai, in Bangalore, to say, I don't know about Trichy or whatever, Chennai, somebody is interested. If he says, hey, I need to get these, let's say Dave says then, guy, I'm not going to do anything until you get data. Can I ask you to support Prasad?
Yeah, we can support data, and if we need to do any analysis, like in Mumbai or Pune, we have our lab, we have facility where we can send a team and we can do the analysis, because we are done for Bhima River, Vaitarada, all these rivers, we are doing it right now for pollution board. So the point is, I just need to know where it needs to be done. And if it's economical, we can then send a team there, if that helps, because the analysis is the most critical thing, Unless you do any analysis, Len has a beautiful solution, but he needs to know what he needs to provide solution for.
So. Raj? Raj.
Yeah. Chetan's dad is Vishwas Kale, and he has had this consulting company, lab, everything in Pune for 40 to 40 years. He has an office in Mumbai. He is head of the several associations dealing with water and wastewater in India.
Lovely.
So if his company, consulting firm, can be brought into this, he knows how to do it. He comes to the US almost every year. So we can do it. We can put a team together. So that's all. We need to decide what needs to be done.
We need a lot of local help, we need local help. We sitting here, we can provide all the knowledge base, what you need, but the people on the ground should be actually there,
Yeah, Chetan, I want to interrupt. Don't worry about this. Who all are there in this meeting? All are people who know testing, who know water. And we will go out and out, not on a business mode, but to really save the water.
My goal is to improve, I like to see a beautiful Mithi River end of the day.
We will help you,
I've been on Mithi River so many times.
You give the input, we are ready to work for you.
Sorry, one more. BK Prasad, can you respond? I think I saw a man from Trichy. I'm not so sure if he's there, Narsim Rao. If he's there, I can ask him also whether he's willing to make a commitment.
He
BK
just
Prasad.
left, sir.
He left, okay. BK Prasad, BK Prasad is not there. I don't
He
think
just left. You just missed him.
I know,
He had already told he has left.
I think it's a network problem. They're all having some network challenge. Okay.
He said he had another meeting. He had to leave.
Oh, okay. Well, Len, it's like this. We've spent now an hour. We see that there are things that you can do which has application, obviously, in India, as Raj is testifying. Question now is, how do we break some of these Himalayan barriers, of opacity that we have with the government and all this sort of thing. The other is that we need to get from what Raj said, we need to get down to finding this set of one person or maybe one or two people, you said that too, who can synthesize this whole blessed thing and then say, okay, Len, I need this from you. Dave, I need this from you. And then you two guys come in only as experts. You do nothing to either do social engineering or commercial engineering, both of which these guys will do. I think that's what I've understood from this 1 hour of a discussion. Maybe anything from you at this?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you know, we could really, that's what in the US, that's what engineering firms do. But then the problem is things can go upside down because the engineering firms might be, it's how are they compensated? In the US, sometimes they're compensated on a cost plus based on the cost of the equipment they put in. So
Right.
now they're looking for the most expensive capital solution instead of the best solution. And so, you know, I know you have talented people there that can put this together, and we can help guide
Right.
what needs to be put together.
Right. Right. That's our intent. Thank you, Len. You're right. You're right. Someone's got to pay for that cost. You're absolutely right. How we stitch that together. Yes, Mary.
Oh, yeah, I just had a question, and maybe Len and Dave could comment on this, or Raj even. With water projects, what we're talking about now are horizontal solutions that also scale up as we replicate sort of what goes on in the integrated IT services or engineering services, where you might have an assessment phase that people pay for because they do get a plan. And then after that, the plan is allowed to get the funding and support. But I'm wondering if Len and Dave and anyone else here could, maybe Chetan, could speak about how do we go to market? How do we set expectations so that people know that they need to provide a certain amount of data and be involved to get a good plan that can then be funded and move us to the next stage?
Yeah, okay, you respond to that, somebody, please.
I can put a phase-wise plan, what needs to be done, and I can send it to, you know, BK and
Yeah,
Chandra and others.
lovely. Thank
Then
you.
let us see who will do what. And
Lovely.
then, and Chetan, give your contact information to Dr. Narasimha Rao. He's very active in Trichy, so he will get in touch with you and your
Yeah, you know,
dad
or
can
maybe
help.
we just do it. Mary and I will coordinate that. I one Narasimha out there. There are other people in other cities. Let's see who takes it. The other thing, Raj, more interesting than what Mary was talking about as funding is, see, if I am, let us say, Joe Biden, let's say I'm sitting in the White House, I made a, you know, I made a commitment that I'll give $1 trillion, you know, within my 5-year term or 4-year term. Now, see, if I were to look at India from any angle from the outside, there are people who can see that, you know, these millions of lakes. I mean, Bangalore alone has got today, well, surviving about 120. Surat has got about 120 lakes. Bhopal is a city of lakes. Hyderabad is a city of lakes, you know, all that. So everyone at the global level is interested in something like this. And here we are, you know, it's like USA saying, well, if you guys know at the ground, at the on-ground level, that there are things that need to be sort of strung together before we get techno expertise, then it can happen. That means that organizations such as, let us say, Chetan Kale's fathers, or the ones that, let's say, Alltech itself, or WOW, or Global Water, how do we get a fund for somebody like this so that we beat that challenge that Len Bland talked about, of, you know, synthesizing, getting ready solutions, and then letting guys like Len and Dave to come in? How do you do that?
I was involved with US Trade Development Administration about 2003 in Hyderabad. They had a problem of the Musi River getting all kinds of contamination, treatment plants not working, and they need more stuff to be done. So what USTDA did, said, we want proposals from US consulting firms that have offices in India to come up with a solution completely paid. The $600,000 will be paid by USTDA. So then I put a proposal together through Black & Veatch, which is a huge operation in Mumbai, and CDM Smith is in Chennai. So they put together a proposal and we came neck to neck, and the whole idea was to recycle every drop of water and make the Musi River clean enough so water can be used for agriculture, for so many other purposes. So that $600,000 study was completed by CDM Smith because, they beat us. They had some local good contacts in Hyderabad Water Supply Sewerage Board. And that study was completed in 2004-05. What has been done by the government since then to really implement all those things, I don't know. So that is where some coordination is needed. USTDA is always looking for those kinds of opportunities, which lead on to more, things that US firms can do there, or US firms, India operations can do. So I can give you 5 or 6 major firms, US-based firms who have major offices in India, who will take on this kind of a study. And they can even go to USTDA and say, to study this problem, we need 500,000. You put up the money. And so all this can be done if there is a will, there's a local problem, a local leader who says, once the study is done, we will really go ahead and implement it. That's what TDA likes to know, that there is somebody who's going to really take this investment of whatever, 200, 500, whatever $1,000 to then go to the next phase. Once that is put together, I will give you 6 names of people in India from CDM Smith right in Chennai who can start taking this up and working with the local consultants, local experts. Okay.
So it seems like a slightly long haul, but it will be really worth it, Mary, for us to look at this, because
I just had a quick suggestion. Can we start with a small pilot project or a small lake? Because Mithi River is a big thing. Even the Hussain Sagar is a big lake. I mean, by the time you get all the approvals, permissions, it's going to be like another 5-10 year project.
Okay, Chetan,
so we can demonstrate a small pilot project, show that it works, and then scale it up. That way,
keep on this side.
Take us seriously.
Chetan, I'll go one step further. If some of them have left here who are representing apartments and such, but let's say, how small can this nanotech go? That is,
well, that's what we should check. With lens, like, what is the small scale thing we can show that it works, and then scale it up. Then you don't have to. The project speaks for itself, So
got it. Thanks, Chetan. Yeah. Len, the question is like this: if I have, let's say, an apartment block, and let's say there's only 100,000 liters of water a day, what would it cost then? And will your system work there?
All right, so you're asking me to answer the same question I told you I wasn't going to answer.
Yeah.
You're telling me how much water there is. You're not telling me what's in it or what the problem is. We have to do the same thing. We have to do the analysis on the water. We have to figure out what's in there, and then we can start.
Okay,
start
I could send you some. Yeah, fair enough.
And we have a worksheet that we put together that helps to gather information like this.
Send that to us, all of us. Okay.
Sure, I'll do that.
Got it.
Wonderful.
I'll do that.
Thanks, Len.
Sure.
And where are you located in Chicago?
We're in Deerfield, which is on the north side.
Oh, I know.
Northern.
One of these days we'll get together. I'm in Oak Brook. Okay. Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I'm in Naperville too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Chetan is in Naperville. Yeah.
Yeah. You're all part of the.
Can I come in?
Yes, please. Yes, Mr. Rana.
My first, would like to, or rather suggest that, about the product or whatever we are talking about this subject, we want detailed understanding about the product.
Okay.
Yep. You will get that.
To start with, anything we start, when we are talking about analysis and depth and this, everything is known to me very well, and we are already treating this with very cheap bacteriological arrangement. Of course, it requires oxygen, but then we are using at the moment ozone generator, and in a very, very light concentration. Because the simple thing is, which I learned, I went to America, that is in the USA, and in San Francisco there was a company, and there I studied this almost 40 years back. Now, oxygen, cylinder or gas form and all that, it is not dissolving in the water because it does not have affinity. Water has no affinity toward oxygen. This is the first thing. The best thing is, ozone, which is 98% soluble in water, and it gets converted back to oxygen in short time. Of course, it also related with the temperature of the atmosphere, that, and all the temperature of water and all that is there. But there are ways and means to do it. Advanced oxidation in water treatment is a old technology. Along with that, only ozone, and instead of feeding oxygen, we can do it with the air feed, whereby concentration of ozone will be less. So about this technology, first we must have a knowledge about what is this technology, what it can do. That is needed. Rest of the other thing, I promise, we have 7 lakes in Baroda. I will directly talk with the municipal commissioner and get it done.
Lovely.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr.
Ravalji, would you want to respond since you agree with Rana Saab? Mr. Raval, he doesn't like to speak. He just now put a nice chat note. He always does this. And then he will send me one long note, after the meeting. And yeah, he's brilliant, but he doesn't speak here. Okay, Len, do you want to respond to that about ozone and oxygen?
Yeah, we can create ozone nanobubbles as well. So, and it increases the concentration of ozone, and we need to do some testing, but we think it's going to enable them to last longer in solution, and we've seen that with our initial testing. So if it's a chemical oxygen demand, it's a great solution. It's not necessarily going to be the best solution for bacteria because they want to breathe, right? And they're looking for oxygen. However, when you have chemical oxygen demand, the ozone is an approach, and then when you create nanobubbles, you also create some hydroxy radicals that are going to also have that impact in going after chemical oxygen demand right away, even if you're just using oxygen or even if you're using air. Now, when we use our system and we're going to go to high volume, we're recommending that we use an oxygen generator because otherwise you need 5 times more system. All right, why would you do that?
Upinder Raval, your response, or Mr. Rana, one of you.
I want to understand first basic things about the technology and how it works. I understand that nanobubble and bubble size, smaller the size, better concentration will be there of oxygen.
There's a secret that I didn't talk about. So when we measure the dissolved oxygen, and I showed you it was 50, it could be up to 140. When we measure the dissolved oxygen in a solution, we're not actually measuring the oxygen in the nanobubbles. It does not measure the oxygen in the nanobubbles. And the reason why we get dissolved oxygen higher levels is because those nanobubbles have pressure around them. They create an equalization zone. So the water is, artificially a higher level of pressure, even though externally it's the same pressure outside. And so you can have more gas in a liquid at higher pressures. We think that we could be putting as much as 1/3 gas in solution coming out of our system, and that's why we dilute right away. That's why we scale up really nicely. So there's a lot to discuss, and we'd be interested in doing that. The important point is though that it's a community. It's a community that needs to provide the solution. It's a community that needs to understand the data going into it. It's a community that needs to say what kind of bacteria are the best, what kind of, is that resident, what kind of enzymes can help the process, what kind, who's going to service and monitor the solution. It's community.
Yeah, we'll put a team together. Yeah.
Right. Raj, if you can guide us on this, it might help us. See, if you listen, I mean, when you listen to MD Rana, he's saying 7 lakes in Vadodara. We know the Vishwamitri River is there, and and we know the the sickness that has sort of taken over there too. Well, Rishabhavati here, like Prasad said. So I'm saying, well, like Chetan asked, hey, how do I now get something, piloted? I can't do it at a city level. You know the problem. The city scale means the government and therefore time. If I can do it in the private sector, that is why I asked him about an apartment and something like this. And he says, I need some basic data. We can always provide him that from some place or the other as far as parameters of water quality go. That shouldn't take me too much time. So we let it try and see how we work that in some place, like Chetan says, have it succeed, and then say, guys, this is working. Now try and see if we can take it to other places. Raj?
Yeah. I think what Mr. Rana has offered, some of the lakes there, we can start with that as a pilot.
Yeah.
And Len, send us the sheet data that you want to start just seeing how your technology will work. And Dave also has given us some information as to what basic things he needs, what's in that lake, in the sludge, in the water. So let us collect that information. Okay. And then, and that can easily be done with local labs there. And if somebody like Mr. Rana is willing to take responsibility for one lake there, we can do a pilot and show it works. And then we have got to get that word out throughout the country that this works and this is the cost. Then people will jump at it. So that is what needs to be done. So I will help you with that. Yeah.
Wonderful. Ranaji, last time when Dave spoke, you had stepped in and said some very nice things as to what you could do to take that technology if you had more information. Would you want to say something about it? If we have another 8 or 9 minutes, maybe you can use a couple of minutes. Then I can ask Radhaji to speak after that. Ranaji.
No, basically, product knowledge is an important thing because see, I consider water treatment is not a science. It is an art. There are a number of technology. We are talking about, this technology.
Sure.
It's new. But then, there is a membrane technology, filtration technology, advanced oxidation, normal oxidation, and so many things.
Okay. Short question. Do you want me to sort of mail you and Dave and see if you want to take the conversation further in the interest of your being able to adopt a solution in Vadodara?
Yes, we can. I will definitely do it 100%. Wonderful. And I will be able to manage with the government or whatever it is.
I know. That's right. That I heard.
Len himself can write a letter to Mr. Rana.
One more thing I would like to tell you. I was the first one, nobody knew in this country what is BOD and COD. I'm talking about 40 years back. I had, filed a writ petition for Gujarat State Fertilizer and it was closed down for 7 days.
GSFC, yeah.
Then Justice Kripal was there at Gujarat High Court and then, he was telling me that how do we measure and how do we do this? So BOD and COD was introduced and it is implemented and then board and all that is established.
Okay. Quickly from you, Radhaji, anything at all in the next minute or two. It doesn't matter if you can't turn on your video. You could turn on your audio.
Yeah.
Rahulji. Upendra Rahul? No. Okay. He's putting out copious notes there on the chat box, but he's not speaking. Great. Over to you, Mary. Lovely session. We'll see what we can get out of it as we go along. You also saw, Mary, on the chat box, Narasimha from Trichy came in, encouraging. He says, I will listen to it later. I'm sure he has to go for some operation at the other. He runs this blessed hospital and he's got all these patients who are waiting for him to do things to him. I mean, he sets bones right. So somebody is breaking somebody's bones every day, I suppose. And so he's in business. Mary, so what do you think we should do from here? Anything that you want to offer as last notes? I'm very grateful to Raj for having, the first time, said that he could guide us through this process. He's left the meeting, but we will talk to him. Over to you, Mary.
Yes, well, I think we had the experts all chime in. We heard about a very interesting solution that plays across almost every vertical, but is best going to market with partners. And Len, your collaborative approach is really wonderful. So thanks for joining us at this early hour here and sharing the power of nanobubbles. I think what we'll do is continue this conversation, but we heard from a number of people the commitments. So Raj will help open some doors and provide the opportunity for assessments. You'll work with us, Hari, with MD Rana to get that stuff done. And we can also continue the conversation always in the Global Waterworks community.
Mary, I think I heard something differently from Raj. What he's saying is that Len and maybe Dave will send their stuff to him, to Raj, and Raj will obviously work with Chetan and his father, because I know Chetan and Raj work together. And they will stitch together to make sense for somebody like Mr. Rana or Narasimha or somebody else like BK Prasad. That is, they will do a little bit of, shall we say, treatment to it, like they say in films, and then send it to us. I think that's what I've understood, Mary.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Chetan was nodding his head,
Well, no, like I said, a lot of data needs to be put together. So let's be more specific about which project, that will be important, because
I can send you for one project. Okay, no, but it's a chicken and egg, Chetan. If I ask Mr. Rana, he will say, well, first tell me what your product is about or what you can do. Then I will see if I can send you something about my product.
Okay, that's fine. Let's set up some, at least some path,
Yes. Am I right, Mr. Rana?
Yes.
Sorry.
See, I'll tell you, it's not only water for a lake or water bodies are very, very important instead of, or compared to plantation.
Right.
It works like an carbon dioxide, CO2 sink. So it's a great interest in this technology. We have great interest in India.
Right. Chetan, let me ask you, if I have your consent, what I could do is mark a mail only to you and Rana first. I will leave out Len and all that technology experts. That's fine. Right?
Sure. No
so that it saves them time later. We don't want clutter on mails, right? And the two of you, and of course Raj, and then the three of you see what you can do. I'll remain in the conversation to see if I can steer some of the elements, and maybe have Mary in it if necessary or whatever. We'll figure that out. And then we take it, like you said, we then take it to someone like Len and Dave and see if they can, some sort of team up and make this happen.
Yeah, because, I honestly felt we had attended enough conferences in 2019, 2020, where, the commissioners promised, the IS officers promised, a lot of promises were done, but Hussain Sagar, nothing was done in the last 3 years. Not even a study was carried out. Yeah. So my heart goes out, we give solutions, but nothing is executed. That's the unfortunate part.
Chetan, let me put it this way. There are 3-4 people we are speaking to
now
right
it will
now.
Not happen.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Rana, go on.
Now it will not happen. They are ready to give a trial. And in any case, without looking at, sizable amount of, investment, nobody will go forward.
Exactly. So it's like business. And Mr. Rana is reassuring you that as far as Vadodara goes, or maybe Gujarat, I will say, he will be able to, drive some things. Okay. And similarly from Trichy, I have heard from people, those two people, and they know how to build this interface with the government. All right. That's second. Let's see what Prasad does. So do not worry about that part. Yesterday, since it's a closed door meeting, I can as well say this. Yesterday, I was with the former Deputy Minister of Karnataka. He's now the principal, he's the Minister for Higher Education. And I'm again telling him this. I'm saying this to him that, well, you are doing education, but the point is that there are a lot of other challenges to be taken. You know what he said? He stopped me at one point mid-sentence and said, if there are things you can do as solutions, bring them to me. I have another 2.5 years before this term ends for me, he says. Now, whenever I talk to at the most senior levels, not MLAs and not these MLC levels and all that, not legislative assembly levels. If I'm talking to a minister, they always throw this back, they mock at you. And they say, hey, if you've got a solution, bring it to me, let me see what I can do. Now, what happens later, we can always, sort of discuss and debate that. But my point is, we have somebody wonderful like Mr. Rana, who is again and again reassuring us that it can happen.
Correct.
Let's make this engineering happen.
I mean, if it's a business proposal, you're right. When there is money involved, people will take it seriously. If it's just a voluntary effort, people never take it seriously. So,
Well, that's one way.
I can do it, in Union Territory as well. Entire Daman, Diu is under me. I am their consultant.
Lovely, Mr. Rana.
Unpaid consultant. The reason is, I'm doing this, as a water is basically a part of God.
God bless you.
Our body is having, 80% water. That is blood. You will be surprised. I am injecting ozone directly to the blood.
Sure. I know.
Yeah.
We'll have that conversation later. It's
Yeah.
7:29.
And
Mary, back to you.
the real time calibration is being done, and those machines I am importing from Russia.
Okay.
I'll share with you all the details.
Lovely. I'll write to you a little later in the day today. Yeah. Mary, closure time. It's 7:29.
Yes. I just want to thank everyone for their contributions for this collaborative community you've put together, Hari. And I say in the next 2 weeks, let's have reports on progress with people learning more about this technology and identifying the specific opportunities that we can implement. And Chetan, you drive it forward in the US side too. And then we can have India and US parallel projects going.
My personal interest is I want the best technology, the most effective technology. That's my always, and that is my continuous improvement is what I call it. There's no final solution. We just need to work on something that really works.
Sure. Chandra, I will connect you to Mr. Rana. You can tell him about your Alang project, and let's see if there is any support, direction, guidance that you can get from him. Okay. Hello.
Yeah. Hello. So I missed the first few minutes of the session. Can I have? It was quite an interesting session.
Yeah.
Can
You'll get a recording. You'll get a recording.
Okay.
Definitely. Yeah. And what do you do, Mohan? So that we know how to help you or whatever.
So I'm basically a manufacturer. I basically do some components for the RO industry. So I know a little bit of, I'm quite interested in water technology, and I'm more interested in cost-effective ways of treating water.
Wonderful. I'll come back to you, Mohan, with some details, and then see how you can be part of the BOW mission also.
Definitely. Yeah. I can provide you low-cost solutions in manufacturing.
Right. Wonderful. We'll do that. Mr. Rana, ever grateful to you. Nice to have people like you who have, who have been as committed for 40 years. Like you said, there he is. I mean, you do it pro bono for Diu, Daman and all that. I know that in Silvassa, for instance, there used to be, I'm saying maybe 10, 12 years ago, about 2-3 lakes. I met the administration guy at that point of time. Nothing was happening. You know these things better because you're sitting in Barodra, and therefore will know the Silvassa problem much better than I will know. So whether it's Silvassa or Daman or Vishwamitri or the lakes that you're talking about, and the fact that you know how to connect with the government. Let's see if there are solutions we can find. I'm really nice. I mean, heartened to see you here every time in these sessions.
About the water, what you are saying, right. But then, see, already Hussain Sagar, also I have visited, and I was...
No, okay, I see.
I know also everything about Hussain Sagar, and then what they stopped now. Earlier, all sewage water was going there. So I suggested him, I'm talking about at least 30 years back, and suggested that, first, close down this, nalas going into the river. And after that, if you visit now, otherwise earlier, whenever you go, it used to stink. Another big problem was, mosquitoes. So to cut it, the first thing was, dirty water should not go in. That was first thing
but then,
and it was done. I'm talking about that time minister was, our Prime Minister Narasimha Rao's son.
Okay.
And he had called me in Delhi, and in his office we had discussed it.
My God, you're talking 96 or 95. Yeah. Okay.
Yes. And then I went there and then suggested a number of things.
Okay.
And it was implemented.
Got that.
Similarly, same problem was there for Bhopal.
Okay.
In Bhopal also huge lake is there.
Right.
And now it is beautiful. Now that was also funded by Japanese government. So this is all known to me, and I have been worked with this. Wherever water is there,
Right.
I'm interested.
Yeah. Rupert, do you
100%.
want to say hello to us? Yeah. Rupert Kumar, no. You know, Ranaji, like you said, the Bhojtal, for instance, many other, lakes like that in Bhopal, Raja Bhoj created. We are talking about 1,200, 1,500 years ago. So, I mean, Bhopal is a city of lakes, was, and going sick is another story. But anyway, nice. Well, I think, yeah.
Sir,
yes, Mohan.
Yeah, before we close down, may I have a few words?
Yes.
One way of approaching this would be taking up a very small lake. I am from Bangalore. We have a lot of small lakes. I and my friends, an organization, are dealing with a lake in Yelanka.
Okay.
Yuva, by its name by Yuva.
Yes, Yuva is in our
Yelanka. Yes.
Correct.
I'm a part of Yuva too.
So Ram Prasad and others will be known to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
What would be the right thing is get some corporates to select a small lake and get the corporates and demonstrate.
Thank you, Mohan, for saying. Which lake is this? Tell me about it. Is it the Putenali Kere?
No. Sir, let's try it with Lalbagh or Kabban Park, where a lot of people come, take a walk. They can see it for themselves every morning, or the changes are there in the lake, and they in turn will put the pressure on the government.
Okay, I'll put it like this to you. If you think that you can make that end of it work, some connects out there to get to a solution level. On this side, the enabling is something I will commit to doing. Right? You heard many others there. So the question is now, I've always been defeated by this challenge of how do we get to doing the last mile finish. You heard Mr. Rana. He's very confident. He says, hey, I know how to get this done. You first tell me what your technology is, what your costs are, whether it's effective. Now, we need more people like that, in a sense. I mean, I will always have people like Mr. Rana will be very happy. I'm talking on his behalf. I shouldn't, but knowing him, knowing the way he's committed to these things, he'll be happy to guide some of the processes on. Question will be, how do you get your team, to sort of engage with us? I mean, I can send you my mail. I'll send you a mail.
Please.
I'll do that.
Yeah, please. I'll speak to the concerned people. There are lots of like-minded people who are bent on reviving a lot of lakes. One thing would be to select a small lake, and the funding. The funding is the most important part of it, and that funding has to come from a corporate foundation or somewhere where a small lake would be shown as an example how things could be done. When this catches up, people will look into it. There will be a lot of write-ups in the newspapers, and the pressure will be on the government, and the government start thinking. This is one way. This is one way.
Exactly. Suresh bhai, you want to add to what Mohan is saying? Since you're also in Yelanka, do you want to connect with Mohan Natraj?
No, in fact, we have selected one of the temple tanks, Kashi Vishwanath temple in Yelanka. It is
very good.
They are just opposite to Attur Lake.
Yes.
So we have decided that we will do something to regenerate the temple tank. We have talked to the trustees. They have readily agreed. They were very happy. If you are doing something good, no need to ask us. This is the reply which is given. So I have spoken to Indian Institute of Science, Mr. U.T. Vijay. He said immediately he's agreed. He said, yes, we will take up this. Let us find out the time for everybody. And not only that, there are a lot of youths in and around Attur Lake. So they will also be involved in this. So it's a question of time.
Okay.
In the next 1 month,
Mohan, I will connect you to our Mr. Suresh bhai, who is Mission Director Bangalore. The two of you can speak. You can join that team, which is working on the Kalyani of that temple.
Definitely. I can ask my friends in Yelanka area to also join them.
Fantastic.
There are a lot of young volunteers here who are ready to help us.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah,
that would be very nice, Mr. Pai.
I will certainly add you on that team, and you will take it forward from there. Very nice to have people who want to put self, behind the public purpose.
Definitely.
So let's see. Yeah, you never find them. Look at Suresh Prakash. He's a fantastic guy. He spent 40 years in water, 35 years, and wants to do things, with apartments. He's now looking at about 11 apartments in the south of Bangalore. He also resides in that area. And he says, if there are ways I can put water efficiency into the heads of these guys, the water users there, it'll make sense. So I spoke to him yesterday. I'm putting together a small package that he can send to people. I'll speak to you about that also, Mohan. Mohan, maybe you want to join Suresh Prakash and see how you can, push some of these dimensions, whether it's lakes or it's water users in apartments, wherever we can do some change. Actually, you must visit or discuss with Suresh Bhai what he has done in his apartment. They had no water supply board connection. You know what they did? They said, to hell with you all. They don't want today a water supply board. They have taken nearly, I say today, well, about 10 lakh liters is coming out of 120 lakh liters in a year. About 10 lakh is coming from rainwater. They are going to get another 20 lakhs out of it. They have gone and, got about 40% of their solar energy also coming in from a local grid. Then they put in all the standard stuff, aerators and, your wastewater treatment system and blah, blah, blah. Today, the freshwater demand from borewells that they need is not even some 25%.
That's
how
great.
Do we get, how do we get everybody to do that is the question that Suresh Bhai asks. That's all we are also asking. We need to work this. If, let's say, 1,000 apartments out of 20,000, 5% that is, in Bangalore, makes this happen, then like you rightly said, if we did something, the government will then start thinking and saying, hey, what is this that citizens are doing that, we can't. So we have to shame them into action in a certain sense. That's what I think you said earlier.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we'll work on that. I'll certainly write to you after this meeting somewhere.
Okay.
And, and touch with many others. Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we should
Thank you.
catch you all up informally like this.
Thank you very much. Thank you.